to an episode of Off the Shelf. I'm Restoring Tim HD, and this time what we found off the shelf was... the 1985 Akira Kurosawa masterpiece, Ran. This film is based off the the Shakespeare play, King Lear, which I personally have never seen. This is the first exposure to this story that I've seen. I might have heard of the story before, but this was my first full watching of it. And to say that I love this film is a bit of an understatement, man. This film was just amazing all the way through. It was beautifully shot, the colors were amazing, the acting and performances were top tier, and the emotion, the writing, the story, just everything clicked. Even the few action scenes in the movie really did click. And the blood, whew. When there was blood, there was blood. Being a Japanese samurai film, whew, blood fountains everywhere, man. Gotta love a blood fountain. And just like, man, this film was just, it's a Shakespearean tragedy, right? It's a Shakespeare tragedy, so obviously the ending is going to be very tragic, right? The ending's not going to be very happy. But I found that this movie's ending was very fitting. I'm not going to say the ending yet, but, by the way, massive spoilers for this story if you haven't seen it or heard of the story already. So go out and watch an adaptation of King Lear, or hell, watch this one. This one's an absolute masterpiece, so I highly recommend it. Go watch it, and then come back. But, yeah, this film is just so well put together. It's so well made, and it's probably one of the best movies, not just story-wise, but also mechanically, I've seen in a while. You know, like, this film is just so good on every level, you know, and I personally just loved the shit out of it. And I also loved the characters, you know, the complexity, and just being, like, just so amazing. I enjoyed it so much, and it was very, very slow-paced, you know, it was very slow-paced, being over 2.5 hours, nearly 3 hours long. Even though this film was nearly 3 hours, it sure as hell didn't fucking feel like it. Even though the movie was still slow-paced, like, it didn't, to me, like, it wasn't speeding by, but I was enjoying the movie so much, and there was, like, stuff happening during the slow pace that it didn't feel like it was slow. Does that make sense? Like, it just really got you hooked. You know, it gets me hooked. I really was invested the whole way through. And being that I'd never heard of this story before, it also helped, since I didn't know how it was going to end. You know, and it was just so enthralling and engaging. Like, I was invested the whole way through. And there were like 3 stories going on at the same time. You know, eventually it got down to 2, but like, it was just so good. The characters that I hated, right? And the characters I liked, I wanted to see make it to the end of the movie, because being a tragedy, you don't know what's going to happen to some of the characters, right? Anybody could die, you know? Kind of the rules of these. There are no rules for the characters. Even if you're a main character, you ain't safe, right? In these kind of movies, usually the main character dies, right? In these kind of movies, and the side characters are the ones that get out alive. Talking about that, this movie basically is about, you know, a High Lord, or the King Lear of this story. They don't call him King Lear, but that's who he represents in the story. Basically, at the beginning of the movie, he has an idea, and he says he's getting too old to be, like, the High Lord. He's getting too old to be the High Lord, anyways, like, right now. So, he assigns one of his sons, Taro, to be appointed his authority, right? He gives over his authority to his eldest son. And then there is his other son. I can't remember his name. One of his sons protests this, right? And he's like, "It's a terrible idea. This is not going to be. This is a terrible idea. Not a good idea," right? And then another guy, Tango, he's about to banish his son, and then Tango comes in. He's like, "No, don't do this. He might be right. He's right. You shouldn't be doing this." And then he banishes both of them. And then years, I think, I don't know how much time passes, but some time passes, and the eldest son is like authority, and he's married to the daughter of one of the like rival kingdoms to make peace. But then after they did that, he, as they were like thinking, oh, the war's over, he came in and he sieged the kingdom and he killed everybody, right, being ruthless. And then the whole movie basically is after, is all the two brothers, after the third one was banished, so the two brothers at the time, Jiro and Taro, just fighting for supremacy, basically. Well, they're not fighting for supremacy. Really, it's the brother's name I can't remember, and Jiro fighting for supremacy. Because then, at a certain point in the movie, the dad is banished, the father is banished, and he is like, anybody that helps him will be killed, basically. His eldest son is being as ruthless as he was, right? Because that's kind of what you got to do when you're in this kind of situation. And then they, track him down, and they kill all of his men. He had, a group of 30 men, and they kill all of them. And then they burn down a house that he's in, but he doesn't die, and he gets out. But actually, before all that, one of Jiro's men kills Taro, so that Jiro is appointed the power, right? Then they let the Lord live. They let him pass because he's basically just lost his mind, right? He's gone crazy. He's gone mad. And they let him leave. And then Jiro eventually is being manipulated by the widow of Taro, right? She's manipulating him and forcing it, kind of convincing him to do things that she wants, basically using him as a puppet, right? To get her to get her ends, to get what she wants. But while all this is happening, the father and his fool, the jester, and Tango are all trying to get to the banished son and trying to get help so that they can, overthrow Jiro or do something similar to that. Get protection for the father, basically. Snap him out of his madness. And eventually, all this build-up, all this great, amazing storytelling builds up to the finale with the final battle between the banished son's armies and Jiro's army, right? And eventually, it ends where basically everyone loses. In a sense, technically, the banished son wins, but he ends up being killed by assassins, right? But then, if you go to Jiro's side, he didn't win at all, because his castle is being sieged by the Agane army, I think, or the whatever, another army that is on the banished son's side. They're sieging the castle, and Jiro's army is basically just fucked. Jiro and his army is fucked, right? But right before, his right hand, the widow, she's like, I've got all I wanted to burn this castle to the ground, right? And then he's like, I think he says, right before killing her, he says, die, it's like, fox devil, you will die, and he, chops her head off, and, blood splatters everywhere. And I'm not trying to say, oh, that was amazing, it was a spectacle, but that was, a really satisfying scene, right? Because she's, the villain of the movie, right? And even though she gets what she wants, she still dies, right? So she doesn't get to witness it. She just knows that it happens, right? So technically, even though she gets killed, it's sad for me to say that she is kind of the winner. She wanted revenge, and the reason she wanted revenge is because, basically, the father caused the death of her family. He killed her entire family, took everything from her, took her kingdom, took everything, right? So then she wanted revenge because of this. And the revenge she gets is she ends up winning, which I don't like saying, because I hate her. She's the most hateable character in the movie, I believe. Even though, technically, she's not in the wrong. I absolutely despise her. I think she's awful. But she's she's in the technically in the right. I don't blame her. But yeah, she ends up getting married to the first brother, the eldest, and she finds a way to get him killed. She ends up getting infatuated with the second one, where she finds a way for him to get after the third brother, turn him against him, and she ends up convincing him to send assassins to kill the third brother, and then she finds out that the other kingdom is going to siege this castle and kill the second one. So even though she gets fucking decapitated at the end of the movie, which was really satisfying to watch, she still wins. Even though she doesn't get to witness the downfall, she knows it happens. But yeah, very, very much the way the movie probably should have ended, with basically everyone losing aside from the villain, because of course the villain wins. But, yeah, that's basically the movie. For, like, base level stories perspective, but I think the movie is just, like, so enjoyable and so well made that it's just so great. I don't know, you just gotta watch it to see it, man. You just gotta watch it. And I haven't even touched on one of my favorite characters in the movie, the Fool, the Jester. You know, I mentioned him before, but he's truly one of the best characters in the movie, in my personal opinion, because there's only really two characters, or maybe three, that are a voice of reason, right? Three characters that are a voice of reason. Jiro's right-hand man, who's a voice of reason near the end, Tango, and the Fool. They're the only, and they're probably my favorite characters in the movie because they're the only ones that make sense. Or they're the only ones who speak the truth, and of course, nobody listens to them, right? The Jester keeps trying to tell the father, hey, you're making a bad decision. This will only end in disaster, right? This will all end terribly. And even though he's saying it in like a joking manner and saying it wittingly, he's speaking the truth, and he knows it. It's like he's trying to give the Lord a warning, but he's just not listening because, oh, he's the Jester, he's a commoner, right? And then there's Tango, who is also a voice of reason, and of course, the Lord doesn't listen to him either, you know, and also Tango's likable because, you know, he's a voice of reason, and he's just a good character. I feel like all the characters that have a voice of reason are likable because you can relate to them, right? You can be like, yes, you're right, listen to that guy. Listen to him, he's right. And I think there is more complexity to these characters. There is more complexity there aside from them just being a voice of reason. The Jester was actually friends with the father, the Lord. He's friends with him, so he's like, at the beginning of the movie, he's more like the comic relief. He's joking all the time, being all like, you know, the Jester, just kind of like hopping around, being funny. But near the end of the movie, he breaks down. He has all these crying fits. He's just being absolutely emotionally destroyed near the end of the movie, and it's hard to watch because he's like one of the best characters in the movie, and it's hard to see him in such a bad position, in such emotional distraught. And he's even worse by the end of the movie because the father and the third son end up dying, right? So he is even more distraught, right? And it's just sad. So really, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just like the movie is so goddamn good. And I honestly do believe this film to be a masterpiece. And if you're just like a fan of films, fan of like, you know, fan of dramas, fan of tragedies, if you're a fan of tragedies, film tragedies, not real tragedies. If you're a fan of real life tragedies, there's something wrong with you. But yeah, highly recommend this film for Shakespeare fans of just, if you just want to watch a good movie, highly recommend it. And I don't feel like I could give any other rating other than a 10 out of 10 for this movie. I don't give this rating very much. Only for the movies I think truly deserve it, but I cannot think of one thing that I did not like in this movie. even if I, like, didn't like the villain, she was still a good character, right? Her motivations made sense, and she technically wasn't even in the wrong all that much. You know, she had her reasons. And even though I hated her, I can understand where she's coming from. So, yeah. This movie is just a pure masterpiece. And you should watch it. But I think I've rambled on for about how much I love this movie for a little bit, for enough time already. So, I think I've said all I need to say. I think I've said my piece. So guys, hope you liked this video. Share with friends, subscribe, turn the notifications on, comment down below how much you liked it. And I've been Runtime HD, signing off.